Okay, here we go. Hi, everyone. You are in group 4, and I want to welcome you. My name is Chris Kreider, and we're going to spend the next hour and a half together. So hopefully we'll get to know each other very well. I'm an urban design supervisor in the county, and one of the folks that helped prepare this event. So we're really grateful for you attending. Just quickly, I want to introduce my colleague, Olivia. Just say hello.
Hi, everybody. I'm Olivia Sontag. I'm a associate planner with the county, and I'll be filling the role of note taker this evening.
Great, thanks, Olivia. And I think as we go, what I think I'd like to do is to focus on the questions, and we want to make sure that everybody who is a PFRC or BLPC member responds to each of the questions. So we're going to go fairly methodically through the 5 questions. We'll have about 10 minutes each. So everybody will have a minute or so to sort of add their thoughts. As Olivia noted, she'll be taking notes, but this breakout room is recorded. And so we'll be able to capture a pretty good transcript, and that's important because we want your feedback tonight. It's a really great opportunity. So what we'll do is when I first call on you, go ahead and take that first opportunity to introduce yourself. If you're a BLPC or SPRC member, you know what your sort of role, who you're representing, and so forth. But let's do that when we go through the first round of questions. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to share my screen, and that's going to be the program which outlines the information that was just shared with you from Jeff Chambers. So let me do that to make sure everybody can see it. Okay, can you see the program?
Yep, it's up.
Okay, great, thanks. All right, so this is the map that we've been working with, and as you sort of oriented yourself during the presentation, this is the main new building, the blue building, the existing Montessori school, the playground field, and the existing Career Center building, which will remain. The dark gray area is the Arlington branch of the county library, the Columbia Pike branch. So portions of that building, the red dashed line, are going to be demolished, and then a new parking structure, 400 space parking structure, will be located in that near vicinity. And then here's some 3D diagrams. I'm going to come back to this because our first question is about height. So this is a 3D diagram. You can see Walter Reed here, 9th up there, down here in Highland. And then the backside view, so to speak, or the other view from which would be from the west. And so let's go to, and then we have the information that Jeff shared about transportation. So when we get to these questions, we can come back to some of this, the rationale, you know, some of the goals and so forth as we get there. And then also, as people are bringing, you know, up issues or concerns, and we want to reference this information, we certainly will. Okay, so what I'm going to need to do is to enlarge my screen so I can see who our participants are. And let me just take a quick attendance, if you will. Do we have Cole? I see Cole's on the call. Okay, Margaret Chung?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay,
yes,
great. Yeah, go ahead and say hello so we make sure your sound's working. Margaret, thank you. Chris Fornash? Is Chris with us tonight? Okay. More time for others. Is Christy Sawert attending? Hey, great. Thank you, Christy. Welcome. Sarah Putnam? Do we have Sarah on board? No. Okay. And Chip Goyette? Looks like Chip is on, so I don't, if you can hear me, you're on mute. Just say hello, just to make sure we have you. Okay, maybe he stepped away. And then Kurt Schuler. Is Kurt with us? Oh, hi, Kurt. See your hand up. Great.
Yeah, here.
Okay, excellent. All right, so you folks are the ones that are, and I don't know if you've participated, if most of you participated in the prior process. So we're trying to recreate that in the sense that this is really a discussion for the BLPC, PFRC members. And we welcome the public who are joining this breakout session to observe, just as you would if we were sitting in one of the classrooms or in a multi-use space at one of the schools. That's our goal, and we recognize in this virtual environment this is not necessarily ideal, but we want to have a good discussion. And the content of this not only matters to APS, but it also matters a lot to the county because we have a facility there. Obviously, we have a shared interest and responsibility to work with the neighborhoods and work with the interests that you represent. So with that, let's talk about height.
Okay, can I just jump in a second? I'm
Please.
Joan McIntyre. I'm with the Climate Change, Energy, and Environment Commission.
Okay.
So I think I should have a voice at the table.
Joan, and thank you for interrupting and noting that. Have you been notified that you are a PFRC or a BLPC member?
Well, we usually have somebody represented on these things that rotates between the different commissioners.
Okay, so we usually have one from each organization. Are you the designee this time around?
Yes, I am.
Okay, great. Thank you. Well, let's make sure that you're named. If that's incorrect or we've lost track of that, please let's follow up after the meeting to make sure you're noted. So I will certainly. And your last name's McIntyre. Excellent. Thanks for bringing that up. Anyone else on the call that thinks they are a BLPC or a PFRC member and I haven't recognized? Okay, great. Let's start with Cole. So the question for us, Cole, is there are portions of the building in blue that could be adjusted higher, taller, etc., in exchange for more open space on the site. And so let's go back to the 3D diagram here. And this is a question for everybody.
So I just want to mention that this is my first meeting I've attended. I'm one of the teachers at the Career Center. So I'm still kind of playing catch. I mean, I've seen the emails the last few days, but I'm still playing catch up. So I don't know how much I can add, but please ask the question. But I'm just saying this is my first time coming to one of these meetings this year.
Well, and thank you, Cole. Have you lived in the area or have you sort of any experience with other Arlington processes?
No, I have not.
Okay, well, welcome to the Arlington.
Yeah.
This is how we get it done. So people sometimes they just react to what they're seeing. Okay. Nobody necessarily is here as an expert. We're all expert in something, but we're maybe not the expert in the topic. So in your sense that what you're looking at and looking at the neighborhood around it, right? You see some single family houses, you see some other larger apartment type buildings across the street. You're familiar with the area, obviously you work there. The existing building, I believe, is I think 3 or 4 stories high, so it's not considerably higher than what's out there now. In your opinion, if the trade-off is I'm sorry?
It's 2 stories, the Fenwick building.
Okay, in this building, in this vicinity. So in exchange for maybe more green space, and we're not sure where it would go, maybe it would be more of a full-size field or something at the corner near the neighborhood, a transitional element. The question is do you think this is an opportunity for greater height in here, in this scheme, so that we can create more open space? And where would that be?
I'm just going to be honest. I probably would rather not go first. I'm not sure. I see Christy's hand up.
Hey, Chris.
Yeah.
I apologize. This is Chip Goyette. I was offline. I don't know what happened. I've been kicked out since the breakout group started. So even though you saw my initials on here, I have not been fully obviously connected. So I
Well, thank you.
apologize. So I'm a step
No.
behind. I'm a step behind in terms of kind of what exactly the breakout's doing right now at this moment. I
Yeah.
see everything again, but I apologize. So, but I'm here
Well,
and
thank you for identifying yourself, Chip.
So,
We saw your name, but we were worried you weren't with us. So I'm glad
Yep.
you're back. And basically, we're going round robin through each of the questions. So we're going to get to you in a minute. But the
Okay.
question is about height. So there's a proposed 5-story building, and the goal is or the consideration is does anybody in the group feel that greater height would be beneficial if it were to result in more open space? Margaret, you want to go ahead and offer your thoughts?
Yeah, I wondered if it might help to provide some context as to the layout of the neighborhood. So along Highland, it's residential. And on 7th
Correct.
Street,
Single family residential on
yes,
the west
and
side of the. Mhm.
yes, and it's residential along 7th.
Yes, ma'am.
And across Walter Reed, we have apartment buildings, and then you have more commercial space. So Giant is across the street. And so the idea of building up along Walter Reed seems like a good idea away from, right? So if the green space goes down towards where the neighborhoods are in the residential area, and that the height increases along Walter Reed, that seems to make sense, right? It would maximize the use of space and create green space towards the areas that face the residential area. So I would favor that. I would think that that makes sense. That and I believe the way the zoning works in terms of the coding,
Mhm.
you are able to build up to 4 or 5 stories along Walter Reed because it doesn't face the residential. So
Right.
that's my
Would you
understanding.
support additional height above 5 stories in any location here to
So
create
it would
more open space?
depend, right? I think we need more context as to the larger plan as to
Okay.
so first of all, I need to introduce myself. I'm the principal of the Career Center. This is my 8th year there. I've been through this process since the beginning, right? So we've gone through this many, many times, the Career Center Working Group, the BLPC, PFRC. It's been quite a process. And there have been many different proposals for where we would build the height. So in the concept design that was proposed from the previous BLPC PFRC process, it was the idea to build height along 9th and Walter Reed. So that height was going to be at least six stories. And so now that we're going to keep the original Career Center building and not demolish that and build a new building along Walter Reed, it makes sense to maximize that area so that we can increase the height. I'm not sure in the long run what the plan is, because the idea in the way we looked at it previously was to build height along 9th Street because that was facing the commercial area. So what I'm seeing now is that idea has gone away and that they're going to build a parking lot, a parking garage along 9th Street. That's what I see. And so if the only area that we will be able to build up is along Walter Reed, it would make sense to try to maximize the square footage that we can obtain along Walter Reed.
Okay, thank you. Let's go next to Christy, and please introduce yourself, Christy.
Hi, I will lower my hand. My name is Christy Salbert. I am the president of the Arlington Heights Civic Association. This is the neighborhood that we're talking about. I've been the president for about the last 4 or 5 years. I've also lived in Arlington Heights for over 20 years. I was a member of the Career Center Working Group, the PFRC for BLPC, and now this, and I've represented the neighborhood for a long time. We're a neighborhood of about 900 to 1,000 households. We have lots of different housing types. We have apartments, we have condos, we have single family homes, we have duplexes. And we also have a lot of commercial space. We have over 50 businesses in Arlington Heights. We also have a lot of schools. I think I calculated once that over 2,000 children come into Arlington Heights every day to attend either TJ, Fleet, MIPSA, Career Center programs, and adults at the community high school. So if anybody has any questions about Arlington Heights, we're also a very active member in the Pike community. I also represent or am a member of the Columbia Pike Revitalization Organization, which is not called that anymore. It's called Columbia Pike Partnership. So yeah, if anybody has any questions about Arlington Heights in particular, please let me know. So I will say that one thing that we talked about was zoning, and half of this, it's a very interesting parcel because half of it is zoned form-based code and the other part is zoned, I guess, SA1. So I think maybe it's too down in the weeds, but people should probably know that the whole parcel does not have the same zoning restrictions.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you for that background, Christy. We have a lot of questions to cover tonight.
Okay.
So what is your opinion about height?
So I will say that the Career Center Working Group, we purposefully had height across the street from the AT&T building, which is the building you see there on 9th Street on the bottom left-hand corner. And the idea was that you could go as high as that building because, you know, that's where it's a building just as high. Career Center Working Group, we thought 3 or 4 stories for along, I'm sorry, not 3 or 4, 2 or 3 stories along Walter Reed Drive. I guess the 5-story building would be okay. It's kind of tall for where it is. I don't know if you're going to ask this question later, but I'll go ahead and say it. I would probably cite this differently in terms of I would move the blue kind of vertically across this little design you have so that you're not taking up the green space at the corner of Walter Reed and 7th. But I guess it's okay if that's as good as it's going to get. I'll put it that way.
Okay, thank you. Chip, please introduce yourself and share your thoughts on height and specifically just so I make sure everyone understands, this is the site plan that is working with a budget that has been outlined. So this is the site plan that APS wishes to advance. So what we're trying to really do is fine tune this. I certainly agree with a lot of the comments that our first 2 speakers have made, you know, in terms of the utilization of this space here. What is really the future of this long term? So those are all comments that we're capturing, and I think are germane to the overall discussion. So thank you. But yeah, just so everybody knows, this is the plan that we're working from. These are the heights that are being proposed. And so the specific question, Chip, is if you were to, would you find it acceptable to add additional height to the 5-story building in exchange for additional open space?
Okay, so I'll
introduce yourself too.
Real quick. Yeah. Sure. So Chip Goyette, I'm the Douglas Park representative on the BLPC, and I was on the previous BLPC just as Christy was. And I've been a long-term resident of Arlington for more than 20 years as well, living between Penrose and Douglas Park area, basically. So in terms of the height of that bit, well, and just real quickly, I was hoping that we would have opportunity for discussion as well about reorienting this site. Again, simply due to board presentations, again, that weren't presented here, but in the past, there were different board presentation to the board that had 4 options for this site, including some that were less costly than the one we have in front of us right now. So, but with that said, I personally, I'm not in favor of a 5-story building right there per se. It just seems a bit out of place. I much rather prefer, as both Margaret and others have said, the stories being along, 9th Street facing the AT&T building and the parking garage behind it. I'm very familiar with that area simply because my daughter's at TJ now. And so we bike through that neighborhood almost every day. And so it's a little tricky. So I know we're not talking about transportation right now, and we will, but so, in terms of green space, I mean, I'm all for it, but I think as Christy had said, I would prefer much more green space facing the residential areas, whether it's 7th Street or even Highland Street, the duplexes down over on Highland Street that where all the buses and the traffic occur. So.
Okay. So I think I will summarize at least Christy and Chip in the sense that neither of you are in support of any additional height on the blue building in exchange for open space, correct? Additional open space. I just want to make sure that we're clear that I didn't hear either of you support any additional height, and so that's fine. And you can say, I don't even like 5 stories. That is entirely up to you. But I just want to make sure that we're answering the question that's in front of us and that we are clear about that. As I've heard, maybe Margaret is a little bit receptive to it, would like to see a little bit more about analysis about where it might be. But I just want to make sure we're okay and that Olivia and I understand your position. So next up is Kurt.
Hi, I'm Kurt Schuler. I'm from ASEC, the Arlington Special Education Advisory Committee. I just 2 points. So one is, the taller a building is, the harder it is to evacuate. So the second point is, on the site already, as I look at it, it seems like there's some space, some space that could be used, like over at 7th and Walter Reed. I guess I'm kind of curious why the footprint doesn't seem to take advantage of the full area available, because that's another way to get space. So those are my 2 points.
Okay, excellent, thank you. And John, our last speaker on this question.
Don't have a strong opinion on height. Obviously, I would agree it probably needs to blend in with the community. So, kind of the manner of what the buildings are and the surrounding area and whether that would work. But the other consideration is orientation of the building and height in terms of, can you build back a little bit more space in order to put more trees? None of these diagrams indicate, where the trees, landscaping are going to be. So it actually comes off looking as pretty sterile and not a whole lot there. And that just may be a part of the diagrams. But I think that, again, trees would be very beneficial for the overall neighborhood as well as the school. The other thing to take into account, and it's not clear with any of the discussions so far, is the using orientation and massing of the building in order to maximize kind of passive energy efficiency components, making sure that you're taking advantage of sunlight for heat during the winter and cooling during the hotter summer areas, as well as taking as much advantage as possible of natural light within the schools, which have actually numerous studies show that actually helps improve educational attainment and in the schools. So, those are the things that I would be looking for. And I don't quite see these in these very kind of stark, very minimal diagrams.
Thank you, John. Those are excellent comments, and continue to make them. through the process, because what we're looking at is our concept diagrams, literally block, right? And the next phase, we'll see a schematic design. And then that's where they start showing the landscape. And then, ultimately it moves into construction documents and so forth. So all of your points are noted. Did Sarah Putnam or Chris Fornash happen to join us? Okay, so let's keep moving. So the other thing is I want to point out on this question, there was a part B, and hopefully Olivia has been putting some notes in part B here, because this is a lot of the other things that you've been saying, which I think are important. So we do want to capture that, and other suggestions regarding. So I heard a lot about 9th Street. That's a fine suggestion to make under this consideration. Okay, let's continue talking about 9th Street and the parking structure. Looking at the parking garage placement on 9th Street, what works, what are the challenges, and what other concerns you have? And, understanding that you're not parking managers, so but you are all very understanding people in the sense that we all know how parking garages work, the flow in and out, what happens, the sequence of events. It's not just about what happens when you're in your car, it's what happens when you get out of your car. It happens when you are coming to your car. All of these things play into this. It's also important about what happens if you have nothing to do with the garage, but you happen to live across the street, or things of that nature are all germane to this discussion. So looking at the garage, and we'll go back to the plan, what are your concerns? And then once again, if you think of things that the staff should hear about in terms of the parking structure, and potentially you're a teacher there, or the principal, and thinking about your staff, parents, and so forth who might be using this. Let's talk about the garage. So this time I'm going to go in reverse. I'm going to shake everybody up. Joan, you're going to go first. So energy efficiency, solar panels on the roof. Tell us, baby, what do we need?
Yeah, well, actually, that's solar panels wherever, but also thinking long-term is ideally, we really want to eliminate the need to have people bringing their own vehicles in with, a highlight. I know that probably isn't feasible right now, especially since a lot of teachers don't or can't afford to live in Arlington. And I assume that's where most of the parking is expected for. So I think, part of this is thinking creatively of minimizing the amount of traffic that's coming in, and, and we'll get into that with the transportation section. But you might want to think too, when long-term is designing it so that some parts of the structure, if it's not needed for parking, say, especially the top floor, can be used for other purposes that could support the educational opportunities of the school, like, rooftop gardens and things like that. And solar panels, of course, and I'm assuming or hoping that that's being considered, that will be built into the design, at least make them solar panel ready for all of the buildings.
Excellent points. Okay, Kurt, you're up next.
Thank you. I see there's one entrance exit. That's fine if people are not going to be very bunched up at the times they enter and exit. If they are going to be really bunched up, then it might be desirable to have another entrance, which can be but one that could be closed off during non-peak times.
Good point. Good point. Who do we have next? Chip.
Yes.
Any thoughts on the garage placement, or
Yep.
or anything to consider in terms of the design or other uses?
Yep.
Thanks.
Yep. So the parking garage, I think it's interesting that it's right there, because again, right now, and I know we're not talking about transportation, all the drop off and all the congestion right now is on Highland Street, right, for this site. And so that obviously a 400 space parking garage is obviously going to bring a lot more congestion to all those homes at that location, right? So again, if redefining the site, putting blocks in different places was available, I mean, I definitely want to start having that conversation. And, as someone that works in transportation every day as part of my day job, the 400 parking spaces seems pretty high to me. There's only 260 parking spots, for instance, at Wakefield that has, 2,200 kids, including, a lot more drivers than are going to be at this site, right? So I truly question that many parking spots, mainly because more parking will attract more driving, right? And I realize teachers don't live here, but you can sure do van pools, you can do commuter shuttles, you can do a whole host of things that can help teachers, because we do it every day where I work. We run those things, and it does get employees to our hospitals, and the employees love them because they don't have to worry about traffic and they don't have to worry about stress. So, and I would also agree with Joan in saying if it is a garage, you should definitely have solar panels on top, and green roof if possible, but probably solar canopies would be probably the best option there.
Okay, thank you. Those are excellent points, Chip. Let's go now to Christy.
Yeah, I have a lot of things to say about parking, because I would say parking is the #1 hot topic in the neighborhood for ever since we started talking about the Career Center in 2016. As far as location, I'm very positive on. It's literally across the street from another parking garage that I think is 4 stories high. So in my view, it's right next to the ECDC garage, which Arlington County should have already bought, but that's a whole nother conversation. Anyway, no one in the neighborhood can complain to me about where that parking garage is, because it's literally next to another parking garage. So I don't see that as a problem. As far as number of spaces, I will say this. They underparked TJ Fleet when it was built. It was supposed to be 3 levels of underground, and it ended up being 2 levels. And so what happened was the teachers had to enter a lottery in order to get a space, which has resulted in teachers leaving. It has also resulted in Dr. Legnor, who is the principal of Fleet, testified in the county board meeting. I was also there, that he cannot get substitute teachers to come to Fleet because there's no place for them to park. And why would they bother coming to Fleet when they can go somewhere else in APS? And I feel that strongly for teachers who, if they're a lot younger and didn't buy their house 20 years ago, like I did, it is unaffordable to live in Arlington and have a single family house and a home that you with the yard, which is what a lot of people still want. And so we are in a teacher shortage. They're dealing with a lot of things right now. I cannot agree to, having them have, what I've heard from teachers over and over from Fleet TJ is that they have to come in from wherever they're coming in, Fairfax County, Loudoun County, Herndon, etc. And then the next thing they have to do is circle the neighborhood for 10, 15, 20 minutes looking for a space.
Well,
And
Christy,
so
I hate to interrupt, but we're already well behind our time.
I know.
So
please let me finish though.
Well, just make,
So-
see, as I take it, my takeaway is your point is, please right size the parking. Okay, and I think everybody on the call knows about the issues that you're raising. So I think they're really valuable, but
yeah, I don't think
I-
everybody knows, but
I think these are all BLPC, PFRC members who've been slugging through this process for years. And so I just want to make sure that we are able to answer all the questions and that everybody has it. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Do you have any other quick hit points about the parking garage location?
Location, no.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Appreciate that. Let's go now to Margaret.
Yeah, I think due to the existing areas that are already planned, it makes sense. So yes, I think that having the garage located there, and in terms of the number of spaces, just to let people know, it's not just Career Center staff that will be parking there, Montessori staff, library patrons, any visitors that come to campus, parents, any events that happen. So it really does encompass a lot of visitors and also other people that need to park on a regular basis. Right now, we have about a quarter of our staff having to park on the streets, and any visitors who come to the Career Center have to circle the neighborhood to try to find parking. So to have sufficient parking is very important. The location makes sense because there's no other place really to put it.
Okay, thank you. I'll return back to you, Christy, but first I want to give Cole an opportunity. Do you have any thoughts on the garage location, Cole?
Yeah, well, I have a quick question. So to enter for teachers in the parking garage, could buses potentially be lined up waiting to get into the parking lot near the school where it could block off the entrance to it? That makes sense.
That whole discussion is part of the transportation planning that would go into it. So there's, how the timing of the buses, the queuing of the buses, that's a highly orchestrated and sort of technical process. But I will say that APS puts a lot of effort into studying that and working very closely with the county to minimize any queuing on the street, and all of those things will be considered. So the times, the drop-off times, it's an orchestra of events. So the answer would be yes. It will be looked at, it will be considered, and every effort would be made to prevent any delays due to the buses and so forth. But they do take precedence. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because I know just one concern before has been with teachers is just having to maneuver around buses or worry about the buses either coming into school or leaving, which could cut into commute times.
Okay.
So that would be something that I think teachers would appreciate knowing in the future.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Christy, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to say one more thing about Highland Street for people who don't live in the neighborhood or aren't familiar with it. Highland Street is some single family houses on the north side, on the north portion of the street, but on the south portion of the street, those are duplexes. And it's very, very congested or dense there. So I think as far as, parking on the street there, it's pretty much all taken up. So I just wanted to say it's a very dense area around that place because of the duplexes. And a lot of families that live in the duplexes are multi-generational. And so that is something to keep in the back of your mind.
Okay, thank you. I want to, I think we've really touched on question 3 because many of you have discussed the strengths and or concerns around the plan that's been presented. There were questions about, the utilization of Ninth Street as it had been done. There was questions about the orientation of the building. So I think we've captured most of those thoughts and strengths around that. I think Margaret was talking about that, and I think several people mentioned that if we were going to have height, the best place to put it is along Walter Reed. I will give everybody a quick opportunity if they want to add any additional comments about the preliminary site plan. Here's your chance. So I think Joan had her hand up. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Chris, I just wanted to say I just popped in for a little bit and I've been listening. Does anybody have any questions for me? Jeff Chambers. If not, I'm going to pop into another session. All right.
Okay.
Carry on.
Sir.
Hey, Christy.
So, Joan, any other strengths or concerns related to the site plan that we have not addressed or have not been mentioned already?
Well, the one thing that I, don't have a good understanding is, from a conceptual point of view, what is the decision made in terms of making the building zero carbon or zero energy, because that's a crucial decision along which, the building should be designed around. But, some of those basic things really should be walked up and started at front, and really, we shouldn't be building any buildings that aren't highly energy efficient and hopefully can be powered mostly by solar panels on the roof. And possibly, and this may have areas for geothermal. So, building those into it will actually ensure much lower costs for running the building, as well as reduce carbon emissions. And it goes without saying, there should be no natural gas used on the facility. But again, that commitment should be part of the initial conceptual thought process of the Career Center.
Mm-hmm.
And I know Arlington's got a good history of building those types of buildings for schools, starting with Discovery School. So we know how to do it.
Yep, absolutely. Chip, you had your hand up next, I think, and then we'll go to Margaret.
Yeah. So, I'm picking up on what Joan just said. The best thing for the environment and to reduce carbon, obviously, is to repurpose the buildings you already have, right? And there's embodied carbon involved with building brand new buildings, a lot of it, frankly. And so, again, what I think is kind of missing here is kind of an alternative, design and placement of buildings and phasing that can, not only meet the needs of the students, but also meet environmental needs and meet financial, save money basically on the project. And so that's just my comment. We're given kind of this site plan. We're not given an opportunity to actually talk about, I spent over a year on the previous BLPC talking about where buildings should go and so forth, and what should be repurposed and so on and so forth. And I realize this is a very much tighter time frame, but again, it seems like there were other options that were presented that we could look at, and that's all I'm asking for.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. Margaret, any additional thoughts on the site planning?
Yeah, so two things. I wanted to first respond to the previous comment that was made on the site location, and the fact that this option out of the 4 options which were presented to the school board was chosen because it allowed the current Career Center and all the programs to continue on a site without renovation occurring on the existing site. So to build a brand new building in its new location makes the most sense on a school level. And then in terms of the location, it excites me to see it along Walter Reed, because often people who pass down Walter Reed see signs for the Career Center, but they don't see the building. All they see is the library. And they have no idea that the Career Center is a school, a career and technical education high school, and they don't get to see what it is, right? If they drive along Walter Reed. Now, with its location along Walter Reed, it's clearly visible. We can make the learning very visible. We can have, windows. We can have the purpose of who we are as a career and technical education high school that serves not only our students but the community. And making it so visible, that really excites me. So the location actually, to me, is something that I think is a great plan.
Okay, thank you. And Christy, you had your hand up?
Yeah, I just wanted to say overall, I would say the neighborhood's greatest concern of what I've heard is, and I understand this isn't part of our particular charge, but an empty building staying on the site is very worrisome in terms of what's going to happen. How many are they going to, someday put 700 kids in there all of a sudden? And I think, as everybody knows, there's problems with the building in terms of infestations, or there was in the past, and there has been also at MIPSA. So I just want to throw out there at some point that having an empty building there, whether it's MIPSA or Career Center, for long term is very unsettling for the neighborhood.
Okay, thank you. Those are good points. Let's go to the. We've got 16 minutes left. We're going to be pulled back into the room, I believe, the main room at 8:30. So I wanted to make sure we had some time for transportation issues and questions. And so the transportation project goals are safety of students, right sizing the transportation infrastructure, and that includes the parking and the access to that and the bus loading and all of that circulation, and minimizing traffic impacts. So first of all, are these the right goals? And are any sort of, from a transportation perspective, let's put it this way, are there other transportation goals beyond safety of students, right sizing the infrastructure, and minimizing traffic impacts? And let's go back to Cole. And do you have any thoughts on sort of, from your perspective, are these the right goals, or are there additional ones?
As of right now, I don't have any comment for this, but if I do, I'll put my hand up towards the end of the combo.
Okay, thank you. And then Margaret, back to you.
Yeah, thank you. So having safety of students as the primary and first goal is something that I would favor, that I think that makes sense. I wonder if you could clarify what's meant by right-sizing career center transportation infrastructure.
Yeah, that's looking across all modes. So it's not just cars. It's supporting, providing the right facilities for the demand overall, whether it be pedestrians, cyclists, people arriving by bus, car, visitors, things of that nature. Are we right sizing the infrastructure that we're not in a critical situation where it's failing, but we're also not in a situation where we're just not using it and we're wasting space?
And so would that include, so this idea of the flow of the traffic pattern, where is that addressed in either A, B, or C?
Yeah, so if you have concerns about that, this is the sort of the idea, this is the time to say, that this flow, we're sort of focusing on parking, teachers, and perhaps parents, other people who work here sort of in this area, buses coming in, kids discharging here, prepared, time loading and
Yeah.
for service. So all of those
just
are
comment
factors.
that as a career center, CTE Center, we have a unique feature that isn't true for other schools. We have shuttles that come 3 times a day because of the career and technical education students that come from the home schools. So that idea of traffic pattern and the flowing of where the students are going to be, dismissed, and to what extent it might interfere with other things that are going on the campus. So I just wonder if those considerations could be made so that the drop-off location of students, not only from the buses, but also parent drop-off, those would be considered.
Okay, great points. Christy, you're next.
Yeah, so I feel like teacher satisfaction is a very important goal, teacher satisfaction and retention. Again, to me, this was a lesson learned from TJ and Fleet with the parking debacle there. So I do think that is a very important goal of transportation. I have a suggestion, which is to perhaps close off 9th Street. Maybe a possibility of putting a bus turnaround there, making maybe 2 entrances or exits off of 9th Street, but closing it off to Highland to try to, if anybody's gone up and down Highland in the morning, you will see what a terrible mess it is. And it's a narrow street with parking on both sides. So you can't get a bus and a car through at the same time coming in opposite directions. So I would like to see, don't quote me on this because I don't know how, maybe Highland needs to be one way, at that portion, because like I said, if you see a car and a bus, they cannot work around each other, especially when people are parked in front of their homes on Highland. So in summary, I would add D, teacher satisfaction and retention. And also consider changing the traffic flow, maybe closing off 9th Street, perhaps making Highland one way.
Okay, thank you for those comments. Let's go to Chip. I'm sure you have some thoughts too. Oh, I wonder if we didn't lose Chip. Oh, there you are. Okay. Oh, you're on mute, sir.
Sorry about that. I would say again, transportation goals should be minimizing. I guess it's part of your right sizing the career center transportation infrastructure, because it's, to me, again, it's about reducing cars whenever possible. So, because again, I think as someone that travels up and down Highland Street regularly, many times during school hours, I think a 400 parking garage is just gonna be impassable for bikers, walkers, anybody, right? So, when you say safety of students, I hope you're meaning all students, right? Not just the students at the Career Center or at MPSA. It's students that have to traverse that area to get to TJ, many to get to Fleet, and so forth. And so please expand safety of students to all students that go through that area, right?
Thanks.
And then the second thing I would say, I'm all for teacher retention, satisfaction, but I'm for doing it in a different way, right? Again, where I work, nurses, other technicians in healthcare, they love taking our shuttles, right? And these are folks that are working 12-hour days, probably aren't making a lot more than teachers either. And so one of the things they love the most are the shuttles, because they get to decompress going home on those things. And there's things that could be done here. I don't think Fleet did that as an example. Fleet didn't offer shuttles or van pools or folks that are working from outside the county, but that's something that you should be looked at. Arlington's supposed to be this, reducing the amount of cars on the streets and so forth. And so it should be something that the schools look into, particularly those two schools, because this site is supposed to be a transit-rich site. It is a transit-rich site, which is the reason why, 2,600 kids, I guess, can be at this site, according to, the preliminary estimates. So again, I think you really need to somehow work in alternatives to driving single occupancy vehicles. That's got to be some type of goal in here. So.
Yeah. Okay. Good points. Kurt.
Yes. 2 words: handicap parking. There should be some provision for it. Right next to the building. If you got to go through, from the garage over, one side of the block, it's a long way. That's it.
So accessible spaces to those that need them. Okay, that's a good goal. Thank you. And Joan, did you have any other transportation goals that you think should be noted here?
Yeah, I kind of following along with, I actually think to start with a, aspirational goal of, even if 90% of the people coming to the facility, whether it's students or teachers, can get there by means other than individual cars, would be a good goal, is to, again, but 2 things to take into mind is, can you use the ART bus system and you modify that and even expand it? And I know they're trying to do that with some of the other schools, is using ART buses instead of school buses. But that might be a way of actually killing 2 birds with 1 stone in terms of providing the transportation for students, teachers, because they're probably all going to circle around metro stations as well. And also others visiting the center, and well as, expand the capacity and the capabilities of the ART bus system more broadly for the community. So I think that's one thing that should be looking into is, make this a school that's actually going to be serviced primarily by ART buses rather than traditional school buses. And the other thing is, again, because these schools are actually attracting students from across the community is looking at the bike lanes in particular, is where the students are coming from, and is there a safe path for students to get there from pretty much anywhere in the county that they'd want to, using bike trails and doing it safely. Again, a good way of, and high school students certainly are quite capable of biking on their own, as long as people are safe or feel that it's safe, parents feel it's safe for them.
Yeah. Well, I to sort of summarize, I think that when I'm hearing that these goals need to be elaborated on,
Mhm.
and that also there needs to be more of an eye towards the future and sort of encouraging,
Mhm.
transition and sort of in the way that it's recognizing that transportation continues to evolve, and that we need, in terms of the infrastructure, maybe the infrastructure needs to not only be right size but flexible. So that I heard earlier, maybe that garage shouldn't always be a garage, but we're investing several $1 million building it. Let's think about the future, how those that might be used. It may be that in the future we need more bike parking, or who knows, or we need more, or shuttles, EV shovels, or it's shuttles that are running, constantly are suddenly the solution, and we get rid of buses altogether. I mean, there's so many opportunities. So I think keeping an eye towards the future and being flexible around our transportation design seems to be what I'm hearing from
Yeah.
you folks.
And I'd actually even put it, let's design for the future we want, because so much of design in buildings is anchored by what we have now.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I think we've covered everything. I want to give Olivia a moment to sort of recap, and the goal here is to make sure that we captured at least a couple of key points, because she's going to be asked to share the group's thoughts before when we get brought back into the other room. So Olivia, do you want to share your screen? Or how would you like
Sure,
to do that?
I can share
Okay.
my screen. We have about 3 minutes. I'll have to be pretty quick. Right. So I think we discussed, there was some general consensus about building up along Walter Reed. That seemed to be kind of across that height discussion. And then some of the height concentrated along 9th Street across from the AT&T building. Jumping down to the placement of the parking structure, certainly want to consider flexibility, such as solar panels or possible future green roof accommodations. And then understanding just the current situation, lots of speakers commuting, or needing to commute by car. Jumping down to, I think some of the best discussion we had this evening was on the transportation. So we talked about encouraging a shuttle system, consider using or expanding the art bus system, looking closely at the bike lanes, and then adding teacher satisfaction and retention to some of these goals for the site. So other than some of those things I highlighted.
Yeah, Olivia, I think we want to add on the last one. Joan was talking about sort of, I really thought it was a great point that you got it. Okay, design for the future we want. Got it. And flexible. Okay. Anybody else have any other?
Yeah, I would just add in stress sustainability and building to zero carbon standards.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to be said that, we are not in consensus about that. As far as I can totally understand building for the future, but I don't agree with a lot of these pie in the sky ideas that Arlington County cannot afford and will never implement. And there are people who are living there today. And you know, if Arlington County wants to, you know, start these shuttles out in Loudoun County, you know, yay, I'm happy for that. But this site should not cure all of society's ills. And there are people living there today that have to deal with what is happening there today. And so it's very frustrating for me leading this neighborhood and listening to a lot of people who don't live here, do not deal with this every single day. So I just want it to be known that we are not in consensus on that.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, I'm not sure when we'll get pulled back in, but I want to, that's going to close in 10 seconds. So thank you all for, hopefully you felt like it was a rewarding discussion. You saw Olivia got